So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Capital Planning Subcommittee, or BMRSD, and we will begin with introduction of members. Let's start to my right.
Jason DeFalco, Superintendent.
Carrie Gaudette, Blackstone School Committee Representative.
Sarah Larkin, Millville Representative.
Matt Ehrenworth, Assistant Superintendent.
Matt Plant, Blackstone resident.
Steve Tringali, Millville Capital Planning.
Maria Bolso, Blackstone Selectmen.
I'm Greg Smalley from DRA Architects.
Excellent. And the first item on our agenda this evening is election of officials for this subcommittee. Unfortunately, Sarah has stepped down from the school committee. I would personally, and on behalf of the entire district, like to thank her for her service, not just to the school committee, but especially to this subcommittee, which has been a real project of hers. She's been a strong advocate for this capital planning moving forward, as well as the regional agreement committee, which we luckily were able to get through that as well. So thank you very much, Sarah, and you will be missed at this meeting and others. And with that, do we have any, I'll entertain any nominations for a new chairperson of our subcommittee.
Who wants it? You'll take it. I nominate Tara.
Excellent. I have a nomination for Tara.
I will second that nomination.
The second. I don't know. Do we have to do a roll call vote for an election?
No, only if it's remote.
Okay. So all in favor of Tara serving as the chair of the subcommittee, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Tara, on your election. I'll turn it over to you to elect a new secretary.
I was going to say, so I'm currently the role of secretary. Does anyone want to take on
I do
that
not want to be
role?
a secretary.
No. Oh, she's the secretary?
Yes, that I would
Oh,
not
there's no
do.
vice? Okay.
I'm not the one you want taking notes. My notes are all mental.
Yeah, you travel light.
I do.
Who's not here? We'll nominate them.
There you go.
I'll nominate Carrie.
What do I have to do as secretary?
Take notes.
Just take minutes.
Just take minutes.
And then just type them up afterwards, that's it? I'll do that.
And we can work together electronically on
I
that too.
will second that nomination.
You hurry up and second it, you can't turn around, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Carrie Gaudette is our secretary.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
We don't
Congratulations.
vote.
Thanks, Carrie.
Huh?
We don't vote.
We can on a second, technically, but
She keeps
Non-voting
cheering.
members. I don't know.
That was
Okay.
a cheer
Cheering
vote.
along.
That was
So next on the agenda, we have review and approval of minutes from December 9th, December 15th, and January 6th. They were all attached to the agenda. Anyone have any questions on them, or would anyone like to make a motion to approve them?
I will make the motion to approve the meetings.
Any second?
Minutes of the meetings.
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. And now I believe I turn it over to Matt and or Greg to review and discuss our long-range plan.
I will defer to Greg. We were speaking earlier, and he is going to. Well, I believe we're going to keep the meeting. Are we going to take this as more of a workshop?
Yeah. I think I think we have the opportunity, or we've kind of come to the juncture here where we've separated the capital needs pretty firmly from the building and facilities needs, and I think the two meetings with the capital outlay committee focused on the effort to identify the need within the school facilities side of it, and then lay out the steps for how to get there. And certainly it was probably the first step in a long journey. And then at the same time, the capital improvement program is going forward as well. So separated out and identified the items. So now usually what we would do at this point is to start to get down to what are we hearing in the local coffee shop? What are people hearing? And how can we get to identify it and get an explanation and an understanding of it? And with that comes also personally how much each one of us understands the process, what our strong suit is, what part of it do we really think we understand, and what part of it aren't we as comfortable with, and then what do we have to develop in order to get comfortable? Because as you go out here now, it has to be a consistent understanding amongst everybody, and then explained in words that are yours. So there's probably any number of ways you could parse what we've done, and we've looked at the curriculum and the way we're teaching kids and how that might be evolving. So that's a piece that you might be getting questions back on. We've looked at what you own now and what it might cost to own it. And that's a piece that kind of bridges that gap over to capital improvement and the local budgets. We've looked at how you might teach, so the grade alignments and how that might work going forward. And then we get over to the statement of interest and how you might address the needs. So I think we're better off leading that one with how you might address it and keep the statement of interest as one avenue off of that path. So there's broadly probably those 5 things. What are you teaching now? What do you own? How might you teach in the future? How might you fix it? And then that subset of how might the state help you fix it? Because we've kind of focused on the statement of interest and the capital side of it. And there's bound to be someone who comes along and says, yeah, but there's the accelerated repair program, which could address some of your issues. And no doubt it can, but it can't fix everything. It's going to fix just certain parts of it, and that's if they continue the program and if you get invited into it, so you start to develop all those ifs. So we've got a bunch of data and information and slideshows that are developed, but to this point they've been kind of an iterative process. It's been just developing it as we go. And now I think it's time to kind of look back at that and say, you know what, I think I need a better understanding of this aspect of it or this aspect of it. What do we need to do in order to get that? And then once we have that and we're starting to be comfortable with that, our next step would be, how do you turn this out to the public? How do we get this out? How do we keep it going? We've had what I consider a very good reception at the 2 capital outlay committee meetings. I thought both of those were quite well done and well received. Good article in the Enlightener, starting to get some traction or at least some visibility. And I think we should look for visibility first, traction second. It's not a matter of getting traction if no one sees you. That's not helping us. But how do we get out there in front of the people who will hopefully come out and vote to support it when we move forward? So that says a lot of things. It's a matter of what's what. I didn't bring anything in print today. I didn't want to kill any more trees. Everything that we've done online, I have on the computer. So if we wanted to put something up on a screen and talk about it, we could. Or we could go back through just those items, those areas that that I just put out there and see if any of those merit some discussion and talking points.
So one of the things that was brought up to me as I was chatting with a group of people I know in town, and one of the things that was brought up to me is when you look at the overall cost and the fact that the high school is in the condition it's in, how did it get to this point, and why is it now we're all stuck dealing with this and this huge tax bill for all the residents now for a can that's been kicked down the road for 20 some years. There was I had 4 or 5 people over the other day for dinner who are all town residents and all supposedly registered to vote. And the question was asked to me because my kid brought up the topic of the schools and all the issues. And the question became, well, why are we all stuck with this now? This can's been kicked down the road so hard, so fast, and now all of a sudden I got to look at my taxes going up $800 to $1,000, $600 because house values keep climbing in town. It almost seems like it was met with anger, you know. And most of these people have school-age children, you know. Whether they're elementary school, middle school, you know, and most of them live in a fairly affluent neighborhood where they're looking at higher tax increases because of the value of their homes. And it was almost that kick of anger of, it's gotten so bad now, we don't have a choice. What happened to all these other times there were choices? And I think that's going to be something that you'll see come up occasionally. You know, why did we let it get this bad? Is it mismanagement? Is it just, hey, this is small town USA and we can't afford to do these repairs, so we wait until they're catastrophic? And I don't know that we're ever going to be able to answer that question, but because it was brought up to me unanimously around my dining room table, to the point where I became uncomfortable, you know, and I'm from town, so most of my life in town, you know, I know this town, but it was not a pleasant conversation after dinner over, you know, with a couple of drinks in front of people.
I have a wonder about that. One of the things I have been thinking about, I'm glad you shared that, Matt, because one of the things that I've been thinking about is so I guess a few things. One is making sure we all, the collective we, and anyone that's helping kind of do this and lead some of this work, have all of the right information. And I'm not implying we don't have the right information, by the way, but I'm wondering if we have all of the information. So what I mean by that is, I'm curious to know what was the work done at the high school prior, you know, from roofs to any other kinds of projects. And because I wonder about if there were some upgrades and there were, so I know, because I got the letter when I started my first summer, that there have been other times where statement of interests have gone in for core renovations and for other projects that we were not invited into. So I'm curious about that. I'm wondering, almost like, Greg, to your point about, I really like how you talked about visibility and traction. So I'm wondering about a part of that visibility is, let's make sure in our communication we are super clear with everything we have done to date. Like before this, right, last 4 years.
So one of the things that was brought up was like the ADA compliance. And I don't remember the meeting where it was brought up that it was supposed to have been done by 98. But somebody apparently heard that meeting.
Yeah.
Or that comment was made at the table, and I don't even remember which one, but it was, well, 24 years later, we've still never done anything with it. We've still never made our schools ADA compliant. We've still never dealt with this asbestos that was a big deal in the 80s when the state was going to give away money for it.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points, and I don't know, and Greg, you might advise differently, you know, from the work that you've done in this area. I just don't know if sometimes you have to spend a little bit of time looking back before you can move ahead, and I just don't know if it would be helpful. Like I feel like we've kind of done that in some respect. We've had a chance to like pick at that scab a little bit, but maybe the community hasn't, you know, community at large.
The newer members of the community who didn't grow up in this town. If you tell me that something in this town wasn't done, I'm going to say, well, yeah, there probably wasn't the money for it. I mean, if you looked around this town, look at all of our town buildings. We're a little short on money in places.
I guess, I would say, just to add to that, it's like, I understand like some of that background is going to be helpful, but in another sense, it is what it is. We can't change that. It wasn't this committee. It wasn't the last committee. It's been years and years. So I think if we can touch on it, but we have to move on. Like where we're at. And I'm sure it was always a money thing. Like if we didn't get accepted into the grant program, we couldn't move it forward because the towns couldn't accept it. So it just got pushed aside. And I mean,
I just mean, like, I bet there were things we did do. We did
Yes,
do over,
yeah.
right? We did. So I just, again, like to what end I'm not entirely sure.
Were they ever brought up, I guess, was more the question to people who didn't grow up in town, right? So of the 6 people sitting at my dining room table, 4 of them have lived in town for 5 years or less. And come from other communities, whether they're richer communities or poorer communities. They come from other communities. And it was, how did it get to this point? You know, did the school ever try to do? Was it shot down at a town meeting? And I don't know if that information is out there anywhere where we could find it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was going to piggyback on what Jason was saying. One of the pieces that interests me is the fact that there was a capital assessment that was done in the past, and it was brought forward to the towns as an entire, apparently, I wasn't here, but, we've been told, similar to the study that we just had done, there was a study that was brought forward to the towns, and there was discussion of actually addressing the things that were outlined in the study. And then it seems that there were no actions taken. I don't know if it was purely for financial reasons or where those financial reasons kicked in. I don't know if it was the district that said, well, we can't present this to the town, like this is too much. That would have been a decision, obviously, in a prior administration. Or was it brought to the towns and the towns said, we can't afford this right now, like this is too much from their end.
So there were some Band-Aids done along the way, and Bob might remember, probably when you were in school, Carrie. They had a complaint at the elementary level about accessibility, and they went in and they changed out some of the water fountains and some of the handles and some of the stalls. And my guess is that child didn't advance to our high school because that's kind of where it stopped. But I don't know the family, but I did know that it was a formal complaint with the state. We added on the third grade wing when we had the population bubble. The gym floors I think have been done, but not a whole lot. The roof was done. A lot of it's wear and tear, and a lot of the building, the technology has changed so much that you can't retrofit, you can't get condensate pipes through these interior classrooms to drain outside properly. There's a lot of design elements. The internet, when that school was built, didn't have any of that. So there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of mold, brick mold on the walls to hide the wiring, but you can only do so much of that to stay up,
And I definitely agree with Tara in terms of, I want to make sure that I'm being clear
Yeah.
too, because I don't want to be misread. I don't think we should dwell on that.
Yeah.
But I just
I
think
agree.
about
I think some of it, absolutely. What
Yeah.
we can find, probably more of the fairly recent stuff, but to go too far back,
So
I mean,
it is what it
it
is.
is what it
But to
is.
Matt's point, I agree. I'm not trying to dwell on it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone on this committee wants
we need the
to
info,
turn this
too.
negative.
I just
But
need a couple
it's
of bullets
it's
in the
gonna
gun,
be a
right? So like
question.
I'm a
That's what
salesman.
it is.
I can sit down and negotiate anything. I just need a little bit of ammo to be able to bite against that one, and that was the only point I had a hard time getting through, was that to someone who's new in the community, because to someone who's been in town, we all know there's been Band-Aids done. There's been, my dad worked at the high school for 20 some years. Like, I know everything that was done in that school. And I know how many times he was trying to do something with sorry, there's no money in the budget, figure it out on your own. Like, I know those things existed in previous administrations.
It might be worthwhile to put some small section
Yeah.
of that into our presentation.
Yeah.
Again, not to dwell on it, but just to answer the
I don't
question.
even know that I care about having you do the presentation so much as a little bit of
To know the-
information to the
well,
committee
know
so
the
that
speaking points.
yeah, so if that gets brought up when we're all face to face with someone, everyone's heard okay, because the statements of interest went out multiple times. We've gone to the town multiple times. We've been shot down multiple times. So how did it get this far? Because it's been kicked down the road so hard by everyone.
Yeah.
By me, by
I
by
just
the
jump
town
in.
admin-
That's absolutely true. I was
Yeah.
on finance committee for 5 or 6 years. Then I was on school committee for like 9. So I've been circling this for years and years and years. It was always, we need additional contribution from the towns of X amount, say $500,000. We don't have that. We can give you 75. Okay, that's going to mean, do you want to have 38 kids in a classroom? Or but then we can make things ADA compliant, or anything else on the list. Or so it was year after year of making choices of keeping classes, keeping teachers, rather than maintenance and repairs. And so that was done for years, probably 10, 15 years, and here we are today.
And that's the information that I can use. That's a
Yeah.
bullet you can put in the gun when you're
Yeah.
sitting down getting browbeat
Yeah.
by someone.
So I would think maybe what you could research is, what was the initial request for additional contribution, and then what was given.
Yeah.
But you don't want to get it too
That-
adversarial, though. 'cause
Yeah, I don't-
Nope, it's not. It's
You
not
know.
an adversarial. It's
Yeah.
a very simple topic point of, for the last 10 years, the school has gone to the towns and said, we need to do something to our buildings. We're looking for an additional $500,000, $1 million a year, and the town said, sorry, it's not there. We can give you this. Well, when you do that for 20 years, you end up where you're at now.
That's exactly what
I
happened.
think
And
that's,
that's a
exactly
really
what
simple. That's not adversarial. That's a simple conversation.
Yeah.
My wondering to that is, should we have some specific, and again, not to like bash anyone or to belabor the point, but should we have some specific, like a couple at least specific data points that we can include? Like in 2002, it was we brought forward, the school committee brought forward a request to do X, Y, and Z, and the town simply didn't have the money.
Yeah.
In 2006, this happened. A couple of things
There's a philosophy to this that says tell the story or someone else will tell it for you.
yeah, exactly.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
We need to answer the questions
Just
that
go
people are asking.
Yeah,
that was
Far
the
enough
only one I
back
couldn't
to
do.
explain where we are.
If you've done a study previously, you want to show the overlap. You want to show, hey, 20 years ago, this was identified. It's still identified. And this is added to it. And in between, we've done this SOI and this SOI, this SOI and this SOI. But more importantly, in between, we've also done this improvement and this improvement and this improvement and this improvement. But those improvements do not catch up with this deterioration, which we
Right
knew
to what
about
Mary was talking
20
about.
years ago.
Yep.
So
The
you
pipes and
need
the
to tell
wiring
that
and the-
story,
Yep.
or someone's going to go, you guys are all responsible because you're telling us now what's wrong. So the messenger's always guilty unless the messenger tells the story. So that's all accessible. You have that stuff. You can find that previous study somewhere. Someone has that.
When was the previous study done? How long ago was that?
Kim Shaver Hood.
I was saying it was before I got here, but
But was it done with a designer, a
Yes.
professional? It was?
Yeah,
okay.
it was a fancy, and where it ended, I was on the bookshelf in the superintendent's office when I started,
Sure, it's in there.
and it's not there now. Well, the superintendent's office has moved over that time too, but it wasn't there between Alan leaving and Jason coming. Like, so somewhere, I'm not sure, but it was a fancy binder with the fancy pictures and the fancy,
That's absolutely true.
fancy,
This whole thing seems very familiar.
right?
It
So it
does.
was done by Kim
really does.
Shaver Hood. So it had to be during her time frame, and I'm gonna guess it was the person before the temporary.
Or Alan?
what?
Was that Christine Tyree, maybe? Could have been
Was
her.
it Davis? Perry?
Well, it definitely happened
Or
before
Davis.
Perry because it was Shaver Hood's
Yeah, and she was before.
Right.
that.
Oh, she was
commissioned the
before.
report.
Mhm.
But
I know he was
I'm
just
trying to
short.
think of who would have.
Well, if it went to town hall, we'll probably still have a copy because we have a library in the back room there. The point I wanted to make about looking at coming forward for additional monies, I think you're running dangerously close to a double-edged sword because then it's going to get into, well, which town said no?
Which that definitely
Yes.
happened. It was one town played against the other.
Yeah, I
It's-
mean, my
they're-
first 3
they're-
years
They're
on
the
the
bad
committee,
guy. No,
it
they're
was
the
not
bad
gonna
guy. Yeah, it was.
The budget was, I think.
And those
divided
were
one
mostly
side or the other.
operational, not. I don't know that.
It was the extra.
I don't know that has capital been turned down?
We have two capital members here.
Not during our administration.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that we've gone with any, again, this study was done. Why the study didn't move
The
forward.
budget itself was too much, so we
But-
couldn't even ask for the
I
extra.
Right.
could see a school committee sitting around the table during budget time though and saying like,
We can't
don't
do
even
it.
ask for that.
Oh, sure,
need
sure,
because
sure,
we
sure.
That absolutely
Have
happened.
to address this
But
instead.
to the point, this administration, the only capital pieces that have come forward are, they're the capital assessments, which are the old debt service that's, for things that have already been done. And then we've engaged in a few of the
Accelerated
accelerated
repair
repair projects for which we were getting significant reimbursements for the scope of work. And rightfully so, but admittedly, we went to the towns and we
But
we did
I can,
presentations, but we were accepted and
Right.
and the towns
but I
did
can
vote in
speak to
favor.
the Millville boiler barely
Mhm.
barely.
Right.
But it was.
Have you guys been shot down on a capital project in your tenure?
Not since
No.
I've been here, no.
That's why I'm careful about where you're going. And I came late, so I apologize, but no. But again, we haven't gone forward either.
No, it was just I don't know how much of the start of that you heard, but it was brought up to me that, how did it get this bad?
Right.
With some people sitting around my dining room table.
Sure.
And it was trying to figure out just a bullet that I can use in that gun, right? So I can spin a pretty story on anything, and I was eventually able to talk it down just using, standard construction. Like, it's a
Right.
60-year-old building.
Right.
There comes a point where that's done. Are you going to drive a 60-year-old car every day? Like, there comes a point where you have to do major repairs or replace. I also spun more towards we own twice the school buildings that we need. We have 1,600 kids and schools for 3,500. How does it make any sense to continue to just stand pat?
That's the number, that's the equation I spoke to Greg about. Are we just reducing a couple janitors? Are we reducing staff? We know we're gonna save on heating costs, the high school's gonna be more efficient.
Mhm.
We need a ballpark on that to show the offset.
An operational analysis of what would be saved by
Yeah.
condensing to 2 buildings, yeah.
How many principals are you gonna have in each building?
Mm-hmm. Those are all really good questions, yeah.
We've started looking
We
into
have.
preliminary information,
People
but
start pointing fingers.
Well, no, you say if you
Who's
say
gonna make
so
it?
you have 5 principals down, and you say if we go through with this, we're only gonna need 4 principals. All the principals start trying to figure out who's getting chopped first and start looking for new jobs.
Happens,
You don't
happens
get
every
accepted. Now
time.
you
that.
lost 3 principals.
Right.
They're gonna figure that out.
Happens every
They
time.
figure it out.
They're already thinking it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, as the budget went on, the finance committee in the towns, they didn't really address it topic by topic, issue by issue. It was like, okay, don't give me the song and dance. How much money do you need? 7 million? I can give you 6.
Right.
So they push 6 back at you and they step back. So what happened is, okay, do you want to cut programs? We knew we were losing kids out the door to PBT and those other places, so we couldn't cut programs. We had to keep programs. We cut maintenance. But that was the school committee, not the towns making that decision. The towns just pushed a number back to the schools and stepped back at that point. So they could turn around and say it was the school committee that made those decisions. It was not the town. And they're pretty much true.
Yeah.
That's
It's one
accurate.
of those
Which is
circles
why
back,
everyone's
though, right?
blaming the school
Yeah,
committee now
yeah.
for this.
Correct.
well, and again, I think our purpose at the beginning of the conversation is not to blame anyone.
Nope. It's
or
just to
point-
find a way
it's
to
just to answer
around
some
it.
of these questions.
A brief
like, just
history.
to-
That
And
has
I,
just
you know,
a
and I guess I want to bring to the point, because I know when, and I can only speak to Millville, but I know when Millville changed its basic kind of structure of who was on the board and who was on the cap, and they started a cap. I mean, they never had really they had a capital planning committee, but not really, kind of, a couple people who said, sure,
And it used to meet 3 times a year.
yeah. And,
Now it's
so
3 times a month.
I think when that focus changed and a new finance committee came in, there was really a push to the school to say, we want a capital, I mean, I think since Jason's first day on the job, we need a 3 to 5 year strategic plan.
How
We've
long
never
ago
had
now?
a facilities person. We've never, so we're asking people who are also being asked to do teaching and learning and business and finance to say, what do our buildings need? Well, we don't know. We don't know as school committee members. They don't know as none of them have facilities background. So I think that was the step of going,
We know now.
bring in the
Keep
experts, pay to
asking
bring
me
in the
Perfect.
experts. And so the towns have been waiting a really long time for, what do you need?
Yep.
But we didn't know.
Having like an actual, when did it go from 3 meetings a year to 3 meetings a month?
Last summer.
Okay, so this is a recent change.
Yes,
Yeah.
What about in Blackstone? How long has Blackstone had a good capital planning committee?
For a while. How long, since the power plant? 1998?
That's the power plant.
That's good.
so nothing goes back, I mean, well, that's 20 years, but
No, but that's 98 was also when you have to be ADA compliant by, right? Do I have that date correct?
No.
Yeah.
98?
Maybe.
Because I assume at that point there was probably state grant money out to do ADA compliance.
I don't really remember that.
I was a junior in high school, so I
No,
don't.
I was town planner and,
I remember
down in Rhode Island.
yeah.
I don't know that there was a real lot of money for it. There was an awful lot of advocacy to get buildings compliant.
Mhm.
There's still a lot of buildings, believe it or not, that aren't compliant,
Yeah.
even in the public sector. Simply because a lot of buildings that were there couldn't easily be made or readily be made compliant. So I think the issue on that is to say it's not unusual. It's less usual than it was in the early 2000s, but it's still not unusual. I don't know that we go into any existing building that's completely compliant, even down to signage and that kind of stuff. But I think the point more is to shape this discussion to say you can argue about how you got here, But if that's all you're gonna argue about, you'll stay here.
Yeah.
And so, let's figure out, let's get enough talking points to prove that you can have a conversation, that this wasn't intentional neglect. Benign neglect is different. Intentional neglect is where people start to look at one another and blame people. But if you're saying, look, it was just not understood the magnitude of what was needed, it was not understood when it was needed, not because someone didn't want to tell you, but because someone wasn't aware of it. Now we are aware of it. Now we need to figure out what we're going to do about it. I think that's the bridge that you need to find the way to cross over that.
That one, though, becomes a real sticky situation, because you say benign ignorance and intentional ignorance.
Yeah.
So in 2002, if there was a capital study done that was this big,
Yep.
and it was somebody came in, even if it was 3/4 or half the report that you gave, that's still
That should raise a lot of flags.
that gets
Yeah.
past benign ignorance at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's also when you say, okay, we've been there, we've done that, let's not do it again.
Mhm.
You know, sure, we had a report in 2002 that showed us all this work that was needed, and nothing happened.
But
So
no one
let's-
knows why that was shot down originally.
Well, no, and nobody knows what it, like, to my knowledge, Steve, unless you remember, like, I don't know that anybody know, like, was it a study of all the buildings? Was it a study for a new build? Like, I know that I was shown not what the report was, but we've had this fancy binder sitting on the desk and we don't have the support to do anything. What that support was, what that meant, where that came from, was one of those like, oh, well, we got to do something because when did Bradley go to the high school?
2014 or 15.
So a wonderful handicapped young man who was going to the high school, who couldn't get around the high school,
6 years ago.
was a
Yeah.
huge
19.
issue for
Yep.
us. And, I think they put up curtains so he wouldn't be cold. Like,
Yeah.
it was, it was like,
Yeah.
there's no money to do anything. And that's when we were battling the towns of we don't have, and you can get 50 cents. And, but at the time I remember being told there's this, whatever it was. And I don't know how to go back and, I mean, there's gotta be records somewhere, but I don't know.
So Greg,
Off the
in
top of
your-
my head, so I don't think that the report was as detailed as yours is and as specific. I think it was just very
Chances are it
broad.
was used to support building this building,
Okay.
is my guess. That
That would
someone
make sense.
someone did some work
Yeah.
and came up, and it probably ended up supporting this being
'Cause
built.
KBA did this building, and
Yeah.
that's about the right time frame.
Because this came in 2003, this came online. And so it would have started being planned right about when that report was finished.
could we reach out to them and see if they have the report? I mean, maybe I don't want to dive too deep into the weeds. My question that I was about to ask was, so Greg, in your opinion, how much information should we be gathering, and what's like? I know we all have to decide, but I'm feeling like we could try to pick out every single thing we can find, or we can focus on a few pieces of information just to make sure that we're including it in the slideshow or our conversation.
A couple of solid rock points that are more than just anecdotal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you live in town, we're good at kicking the can down the road, because anyone who's a town member of either town, yeah, you're both laughing. We all know it's a truth story.
But Mary, to your point, would someone be able to find some of the votes like at town hall, or?
I can look at town hall, and I'm texting KBA right now. I don't know how long their library goes back, because they moved to a larger location in Foxborough, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
So lots of times they purge.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if there would be any of the old school building authority records.
It would have been SBA.
Yeah, because SBA funded this. So if there's a record at the state level of a study that supported this, it would be in the SBA records.
Yeah, but most of that building's been
Yeah.
archived.
I'm
does
thinking that
MSBA
whatever's,
have that or no?
No.
I don't think MSBA would have it, and I don't know if they could access it. I'm thinking that what you need to know is the general gist of what that study was, what it pointed to, and then what's been addressed since then and what's the same, what's the similarities. I think you need to at least be able to refute or support someone's opinion. If someone says, you guys have never done anything, the school's never done anything, you guys are not any different. Yeah, we have. This is what's been done, and here's the intensity. This is where it's ramped up since this group here has started working on it.
Well, we certainly, I mean, just from this administration, we came in, we fixed roofs that were not working.
Right.
We engaged in 2 additional accelerated repair programs, finished one that was coming offline. We've taken on a bunch. But again,
So we can list the current
yeah.
projects.
Well, all the current projects are in that, and that's and it's not that. It's that you've done so you've done roofs, you've done some boiler repairs.
Doors, windows,
Doors,
boilers.
windows, boilers.
All
yeah,
stuff
at
that
the
was
complex.
part of the MSBA grant.
Yep.
Which helped pay for
Accelerated
them, because
repair.
otherwise we couldn't afford to do them.
But how many of those things were at the high school? How many of those things fixed
Roof.
the fact that your high school was falling apart?
roof,
Aside from the roof, though. But I mean, so
We were
and
turned
that's
down,
and I
though,
knew the
for
roof
that
at the school,
project,
but
Right, and then the year that I came, there was an application for a core renovation for the high school that was not accepted.
Yeah, 2 years in a row we submitted one.
Yeah,
what years were those?
that would have been July of 18, so the spring of 18 and the
So
spring of
probably
17.
spring of 17 and spring of 18.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has
Both
been brought
denied.
up. Okay, so that's it, and that's like I said, it's me trying to find all
Just
those.
need- we
pieces
just need that
I don't know.
information. But
Yeah.
yeah, we have to write the narrative before
I think you get
somebody.
that on a little bit of a timeline.
Yeah.
And you stretch
Yep.
it back maybe to that previous study, and you just kind of go along.
Mhm.
And then the ancient history would be when the buildings were built. It's like, because you want to keep enforcing that building over there was designed, what, in 69 and came online
Yeah,
in
opened in
71 or
69,
something
yeah.
like that, And you can't help but love it if you're a school designer or something. It's a great building for 1969, So it was one of my old cars. But it's like you said before, like, I don't want to drive that old car every
I'm not
day. I
there
don't
every
want to
day.
be in that old building every day. So I think that gives you that story. I can tell you the piece that I think has promise that I still don't fully, I still can't fully tell the story to my staff when we talk about it, is the curriculum side. Again, and all the things that you're doing with the other schools and that type of stuff, and how you claw back the career path and keep it from going over to the VOTEC side. I think there's value there. I can't tell that story when we sit around at a studio meeting and everybody says, well, what's Blackstone doing? So, oh, great stuff. What is it? I don't know.
So-
Which I'm very rarely at a loss for words, but
When you talk about the career paths and some of the educational focus of it, what technology makes that easier that you don't currently have in one of your buildings?
Yes, so
'Cause that might be a story to tell.
So when we, in the past couple meetings, have had that discussion around our, our instructional programming has just outgrown the building. So that's what we're talking about. So for instance, if you think about some of the manufacturing, and engineering pathways, or just that one particular pathway, short of having some computer design software, some of the 3D printers, and some of the robotics, like in equipment that students might be constructing these things and they're able to build them. That's where we are at. That's where we stop. We don't have any of the other equipment or the space to actually do that. We have an old. This is the part that's so hard for folks to kind of get their head around. We have the wood shop.
Yep.
Right. I did that. I made the cow lamp. My mom loved cows. I made her a cow lamp. I made a clock.
I know the building.
Right. I did all that stuff. Right. So I think most of us probably did. But that's it. That's the extent of our technology in that area. That's where that stops. So that was why we went to that portfolio of opportunities with different school systems, because Uxbridge has all that equipment. The Ed Hub at the Chamber of Commerce in Northbridge, they have all that equipment. So that's why we've been tapping into other resources for that.
So you have.
That's just one example.
But so just stay within engineering pathways,
Yeah.
because that's one I can get behind. I understand engineering. You have a couple of 3D printers, CAD software, because AutoCAD will give that stuff away for free anyways if you're
Yep.
an educator, and then just a couple of basic robots. And that's what.
Yeah,
you
we have some of the robotics equipment. Yep.
Matt, I encourage you and everybody to go to the chamber and get a tour from Jeannie Hebert of what they're doing there. She
It's
handed
pretty
me
cool.
a welder, It's pretty good.
So I mean, that's why. So for us, it was easier, more efficient, and financially more effective to just partner, right,
So
to a
if
certain
you're
extent.
trying to bring in engineering pathways, and I'll apologize again because I'm the one at the table who knows nothing about education, other than the fact that kids need more of it. The Voc School offers an amazing engineering program. Can you still bring in engineering and not upset that apple cart?
Not to the degree that they have it there. We can't offer like a certification, and if our local vocational high school offers it, and they have to sign off and basically authorize the additional like Chapter 74 program. They have to approve it. So if we wanted to go the route that they are going at BVT with that, then we
That's
could,
where I would.
right, then we would have to have them sign off on that, saying that it's okay, they're fine, they get it, there's a lot of interest, and Mike Fitzpatrick signs off on it. Just for the record, that's never happened, that I'm aware of. So,
If you decide to ask that question, I'll go ask it with you. I know Dr. Fitzpatrick very well.
okay.
But,
Yeah.
but Matt, a lot of what you see in the career paths is filling in the niches that the tech schools don't offer.
Well, that's why when
and-
you said you were teaching engineering, I
Yeah.
knew they offered an engineering program, and I've
Yeah.
toured their engineering lab and sat down with their
But you-
engineering instructors.
But I
and
think the other
through
thing
all of
too,
that.
there's another side of that coin, and that is, and I certainly don't want to turn this into a big discussion on vocational technical high schools, but that is their admissions policies and practices. So we have students that would really benefit from that want to go there, but because they don't have they're not on high honor roll basically, or honor roll, they won't take them.
Yeah, I know. My kid didn't go in. My kid
Right.
didn't
So
go in 'cause she wasn't high enough honors.
then some of the students end up coming to BMR that they don't want to go to a comprehensive high school. They have a passion for something within the vocational technical, but they don't get an opportunity to pursue that. So what do? We all means all. We try to build something that will give the student the opportunity that doesn't necessarily want to go on to Worcester State or a 2 or 4 year school to get at least their toe in that water, so that they can experience that. But what ends up happening is it isn't to the degree that you would get at a BVT. So they don't get the experience, they don't get the certifications. They come out, they don't want to go to a 2 or 4 year school, and they're essentially, they don't find employment in what they want to do. So they're stuck. So that's so for us, what we're trying to do is the best we can put in different pathways where they at least get some experience, some practice, and then perhaps will want to go on to a certification in biomedicine, right? And go to like an 18-month or 2-year certification program and work in either at Woonsocket at CVS or up in Worcester, which is a biomed hub. If that makes, it's like, that's what we're trying
Yeah, no,
to do.
I'm trying to figure out these
Yeah.
differentials because I went to a technical high school,
Yeah.
right? I chose to
Right.
leave Blackstone and go to Valley Tech, mostly because my dad was the custodian at the high school and I didn't want to put up with that every day.
There you go.
It turned into a great life
Yeah.
choice for me that I didn't realize when I was 13 was going to work out that way.
Right.
So when I look at like your career pathways and I say if you can introduce some of these kids to different things in the world and give them, I know you'll never be a tech school. You'll never teach what the tech school
Yeah.
teaches.
And we don't want to, by the way. That
No,
isn't our
but-
That's
bread
it.
and
You don't
butter.
want to lose half your education.
Yeah, that's not our bread and butter. Yeah.
But with those pathways, to be able to open a kid's eyes to that and let him try that out for almost like an elective style class, to be able to put their fingers in that, what do you need to do that? Besides just, partnering with the hub all the time.
Can we
But
use, go
I
ahead.
think that, I think there's huge potential. So let me, I mean, we're going in a different direction than capital whatever, but, so currently I am teaching high school students some mathematics that they need for a dual enrollment program, which we are gonna be starting one with Quinn Sigeman next year for students. And it's just a certificate program in CNC manufacturing. It's the exact same thing that our students are doing at the hub. Learning how to run the machines but it's tied to the college in Rhode Island and it's tied to industry. So it's backed by Polaris and they job shadow and they're more than getting their foot in, but they don't end up with they end up with their high school diploma because they're coming from the Met or they're coming from, it's 3 different high schools. I don't know the high school providences very well, but so they were kids who they're not even going to go on to CCRI. They're not going to go on to college, but they're going to have this credential, this certificate, and they've job shadowed and they've been placed in.
They can go run a CNC machine at
They
Greystone
can
and Lincoln.
go
and
run a
there's-
CNC machine.
And that's what what would it take to turn, if we're looking at building a new high school, right? And I will tell you, I'm the first person that is behind this 1,000,000%, which is why I've given so much of my time to this.
Yeah.
What do you need out of a high school to take your career pathways and make them better without stepping on the toes? Like, if someone says, why don't you just teach it in the space you have? You have an old wood shop, there was a pottery shop down there, and there was the automotive bay. That's 3 big shops right there. Why can't you teach it in that?
There's 2 things that I think are really important about that. One is space. So
There's
space
garage
is,
doors with ramps.
space is important, and the other is the equipment.
Yeah.
And what I want to make sure that we do not do, and Greg, I'm not sure what you're seeing as far as other projects you've worked on. I don't want fixed equipment that in 20
Right.
years from now,
Right.
there is a group of people like us sitting around the table saying,
Nobody does.
why the
CNC.
hell did they put that old equipment in there? We can't get that up. You know, it's like the old wood shop. Remember that back? Right. I want to make sure that what we're doing, we're really thoughtful, that we actually are getting the equipment. Because one of the high schools I've seen recently, will not say out loud, their equipment is fixed. So all the equipment they got is fixed to the space. And that was my first thought was, well, what's going to happen when the manufacturing piece changes and none of this is even relevant anymore?
It all gets unbolted and moved out.
Okay, but who's paying for that, right?
Having
So-
gone to the tech school, I mean, that's part of the ever evolving portion of those
I think
what
it's
you call career pathways is they change all the time.
I don't disagree with you, but I think it's important to remember that the tech schools get $25,000 a student. We get about $12,000. So at the end of the day, it's not apples to apples.
And I know it's not apples to
You know
apples.
what I'm
What I was saying is it's those
have to be
pathways are
nimble.
always going to change. So whether
Right.
if you're teaching CNC machining and you're bolting a machine to the floor to teach them how to run a CNC lathe, in 5 years when that technology changes, where does that money come from? Whether that machine is on wheels or it's bolted to the floor.
Yeah, but so that's why you have to have ongoing, which we have not, I mean, do we have a shortfall? Have we mismanaged something as a school committee? It is not having ongoing planning efforts, not having not thinking forward that 5 to 7 to 10, whatever years you want, even 3 to 5 capital plan of saying, we have this equipment, we have this, whatever, these things have to be on the rotational plan, if you will. It's kind of like what we do with uniform, it's like, oh, we need new track uniforms this year. Well, they don't get them till next year because that's the rotation. So I think where we have fallen short is to not have this ongoing plan of rethink, remodel, and we're doing it now with our curriculum. So to your
Started
point,
that 3 years ago.
we're doing it with our, blueprint to success, and the blueprint's being rewritten and it's being refocused, and you guys did strategic planning way back then, and so we're doing it operational wise, we're not doing it facility wise.
But to your question, because I heard that piece, where is the money coming from? When these changes need to be made, the money's coming from the reimbursements for the students that stay in the district to participate in those programs. The money comes from that $1.3 million or $1.5 million that this year we're sending off to charter school and school choice. So that's where the finances start to, the entire dynamics of the program start to change, because we're introducing the instructional programs, kids want to stay, then we have the money to support those programs more so than we do now as kids are trickling out.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate with you guys to give you other pieces to think about. So now you built a high school that's set up for the 1,600 kids you have now, and you're not building it for 1,800. So you're going to keep some of this money from these 1.3 million kids, and now you're right back. Now you're at a point where you're going to say, "Crap, we got to build another building. We don't have enough room in here."
No, you're inside that one. That one you've got covered with the projections, with the enrollment that you did, because that anticipates bringing kids back in. So, I think that one you do need to be able to answer.
Yep,
But-
I mean, I'll ask
it's
every
but-
question I can possibly think of.
But
you
that
guys
one you've
to
got,
speak of.
and I think if you want to draw the bridge between a charter school, independent school, the VOTEC school, and the general curriculum high school, the successful general curriculum high schools have the ability to offer a project-based learning path for a kid that might be on a career path but needs access to a lab or a CNC machine, not so much to turn out, I don't know, the latest widget out of aluminum, but to be able to use it to support more the general curriculum side of the learning. So you need to be able to tie all the pieces of the program together as a general curriculum school now. So the schools that we're doing for general curriculum are probably closer to what we remember from the 60s and 70s, and that they have shop space, but it's not fixed shop space, and more people visit it. So when I was in high school, you had the things that the girls did, and you had the things that the guys did, and you didn't go to the other two. If you were to go to Wacona or go out to Taconic in Pittsfield, which is a general curriculum with a VOTEC school component to it, you'll see mixed genders in all of those spaces. And that Taconic is probably a good example of it because they kept a lot of their curriculum programs in the fight with the MSBA because they're a relatively small school, they're 500 something students, but they kept a whole bunch of little threads of curriculum, and they built rooms that could handle that and whatever it may become. And that's where you get away from the focus of a tech school and the perceived blasé of a general curriculum school, is you get those spaces within the school where if a kid learns better in a tactile manner, there's a place for them to go and learn. And that's what you can't offer right now with what you have, because the
it's the
spaces that can do
practical
it aren't there
application
anymore.
of the information that they're learning, right? So there's nothing practical or up to date in the current building. So it's one of those.
And I'm aware.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm saying, but to Greg's point, it's twofold. Yes, we want these career pathways because it gives the kids the opportunity to get the general curriculum, but also have an option to maybe have.
We don't.
more
At the end of the
certification.
day, there's two things, and I just want to piggyback on this because two things that I think are important to mention. In a comprehensive high school and across our system in general, 4 years ago we put a curriculum renewal process in place. So each year we are refining, studying, and replacing, if need be, or upgrading a content area PK to 12. So we've done science, we've done English, we're doing math right now, and next year we're doing social studies. And then we'll continue. We'll add the other subjects and we'll keep the cycle going. So that's how we're addressing the core instructional programming pieces. As far as the additional, the pathways, frankly and respectfully, we don't have to do any of those, right? That's not what we're about. We add all those pathways because it's so important for our students. We believe in the career readiness side of it, not just the college readiness piece. The success that we've had is also a double-edged sword. So we've written about $1 million in career grants that we've got. The challenge there becomes, if you watch our last school committee meeting, no exaggeration, we're fighting over sheep brains. Truly, we need $8,000 because we've backed it all the way down into the elementaries, and at the middle school we have a green technology, we have a biomed, and we have an engineering courses that feed into the high school, and all those grants are fabulous, but they all have reoccurring costs, and the grants are basically startups, right? So then at the end of the day, it still comes back to we need to find the cheapest sheep brain, without exaggeration, is what we're discussing, that we can find, because we've got $8,500 for a biomed course. It's called Medical Detectives, that the 8th graders need. The 7th graders take a green technologies course. So we're trying to teach them all about, conservation and climate change and green energy, right? Because that's kind of the future in a lot, whether people want to admit it or not. But so there's a lot of debate about that too, but we'll save that for the mass discussion tomorrow night. But anyways, the point is, there's all of those reoccurring costs. With the core program, what's different, so we're negotiating with our math, the vendor for our math program, and we want a one and done. We buy it once and it covers 6 years of consumables, manipulatives, all the technology pieces. I can't do that with the career stuff. I can't buy 6 years of sheep brains in advance that. And nor would be able to afford it either, frankly.
But I think you
do you
missed.
know what I'm saying?
I think you
Matt?
missed part of my question, though.
I missed part of it? Okay. What was it?
What do you need that you don't have? Like, if you're looking at.
So, can I answer? I'm going to try to answer that. I think what we need that we don't have is space to facilitate technological learning. So
But what is
I don't
that?
necessarily need a CNC cutting machine. You know, I don't need to program the X and the Y, whatever, however, I don't even know what they're called. Don't know. Okay. Don't necessarily need one of those. I can let them job shadow at a place, or I can go to the community college, or I can do that.
You
But
work with
I
the
need,
consortium
but
and-
I need the space to move students around and move the desks around and get on this computer so you can see this simulation and get your hands into this and now shift it, because now we're not talking CNC anymore. Now we're talking biomedical, and now, you know, here's how a needle works, and here's an injection machine, and now we're talking, you know, now the health person is there, and we're putting on the weird goggles that make us dizzy because we're driving the car, and we need space to manipulate that. What we have in the high school is fixed classrooms with fixed science desks with Bunsen burners that don't turn on anymore. You know, we need to upgrade to the technology that they will see and they will use in the workplace.
So then the question, Matt, is how do you take this and turn it into something the public can digest?
And that's it. So as the one person
You're
at
not
this
gonna
table who's
you're
not an
not gonna solve it
educator,
tonight.
you guys are both talking right over the top of me because I understand the difference of a makerspace and what we have. I'm not trying to say what we have works. But that's going to be one of those questions that comes up. And I said, I'm going to play devil's advocate at this
Oh, sure,
table.
sure. That's a good thing.
So you're telling me you need this space and you're making it sound like this fairy tale of a space. But that doesn't really tell me, as the person at this table who's not an educator, other than the pictures that I've seen Greg put up of what a makerspace is. I don't even know what that actually is.
Well, to start, we need a school that's handicapped accessible. I mean,
That's-
they need
yeah,
to
but that's-
they need to get in. They need to get into the building to get that proper education. But then, to your point, and again, I'm not arguing a side, but this conversation is making me think of the phrase "putting lipstick on a pig," and it's like
It's one of my
we
favorite
could add,
sayings.
right? We could add a few machines to the science lab with the old tables that are concreted to the floor with the asbestos over the ceiling.
I got a hammer. I can take those tables out.
No gas lines that work, and no fume hoods that work.
I think the big difference is, and this is where you kind of need to say, okay, what do we need to go out and learn? And part of this may be going to see some places and talking to people that run it. But the biggest difference that you get between the old high school that everyone thinks can be a new high school and the new high schools is that those shop areas are not hidden. They're not down in the hallway. They're not in the basement. You walk in the door and you see them.
Oh, they're everywhere. Yeah.
They are not. They are a part of the life of the school.
What
And
was
so-
the California focused school thing that we?
High Tech High.
High Tech High.
High Tech High is a great starting point. It's almost outdated by this point.
Well, I'm sure that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
And you can get David Stephen down here to talk to you. He's Massachusetts based now. He's one of the people that put that school together, and he'll tell you it's outgrown. It's been outgrown.
But it's that concept of no matter where you walk, no matter where you go, no matter what room you're going in, that room has multi-purpose
Right.
flexibility.
Functional.
It's just, you know, it's, so is there a specific computer? No. Is there a specific machine? No.
That's what I meant about the mobile.
It's a
space. I
flexible
didn't say it well, but-
learning space that adapts to the needs of the current curriculum, learning efforts, you know, it just needs to be flexible and adaptable. So to put your hand on it, that's probably really hard to do.
But Matt, if you
But-
saw some of the pictures that we showed you, all of those schools are available to tour. And the people that teach in them and program them are more than willing to talk about what works and what doesn't work. So, and I think that becomes the way of explaining why the pictures we showed you are valuable and why the school you have right now would be more than lipstick on a pig to make it a modern school. You could make it handle whatever it would be, but it wouldn't function the way school should and does.
So I was in a high school the other day where they were attempting to take an older building and use it as makerspace, which is part of what made me ask the question the way I did.
Sure.
Because that was lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
They had basically capped off gas lines that stuck up from the floor about this much, and they had basically put rolling tables in and things that were on casters that could be moved and rearranged in this large space. And when I say, what do you need you don't have, you start talking about space flexibility, and I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how I can take your answer and the information that you're giving me and turn that to someone who's not an educator, because most of the people who are going to vote for whether or not this happens are not educators.
Right.
You know, we all go to a fixed job. I go sit at a fixed desk and do tasks A, B, and C every day. And you're saying I want this totally flexible, completely adjustable building.
I think with today's work at home society, a lot of people have seen that flexibility differently. They're doing it on, they've had to adjust. I mean, I work wherever I am. I have a desk in the front seat of my car. I work at home, I work on the job site.
I got my phone, I got this.
I work on my
That's like
trunk,
speaking of work.
Just did the same. Yep,
Yeah.
send an email.
So, but I think the fact that this group can't adequately define it shows where we can work on this
Yeah.
one in
Yeah.
terms of how do you explain this? And it is beyond space. It's lighting, it's ventilation, it's heating, it's cooling, it's connection to the outside, it's the size of the space, the height of the space, and then it's what you teach in it and how you use it and how the teachers use it and how the kids use it. So
And I think that's important, Greg, because I think everyone, to what Matt was saying, and what he didn't say, I think is equally as important, because everyone is going to have a different interest in it. So some people will be really focused on the usability of the space, the curriculum that's going to be used in that space versus the lighting, the air quality, right? So I feel like there's all these not competing interests, but just different perspectives on the same thing.
they're all parallel interests.
Yeah.
That unless you get people to look outside of their lane, they never realize that the guy right next to him has the same
Yep.
interest or the same desired outcome from a different point of view.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said what you did about the way to explain things, because I know Jesse's recording this, but he's always doing videos with me, and I'm always getting stuck on how to explain something in a way that's not like educational junk, right?
I mean,
Like,
I
how do you
can tell you
say
a
it
million,
so?
I can
like-
tell you a million benefits of building a new high school
yeah,
that have absolutely nothing to do with the education or what you want the space
yeah,
to look like.
sure.
But the simple things of energy savings, right? That school's an energy hog. And that's part of my
Yep.
world. Air quality. Not having to worry about whether or not the fire alarms are going to go off because there's smoke in the kitchen, or we lit a motor on fire, or hey, there's no heat today, so you can't go to school.
Yep.
You know, you think about air quality. Your kids are riding to school right now with the windows down in the bus because there's no filtration in a bus, and you're worried about spreading a disease. Well, you have no filtration in your schools either. So by fixing the high school, you can now get to a building that actually has HEPA filtration and UV lights and all of these different things that are going to help keep the air cleaner,
Yep.
which has been shown in studies to help with longevity and health. And you can look at a million of those pieces. Lighting, energy efficiency, vent hoods.
Mhm.
It's the flexibility of the rooms that I can't figure out how to wrap my head around, that I want to play devil's advocate with to try to get as many different views of it.
Mhm.
So it's another piece I can, because everyone I talk to, I talk about the benefits of a new building from an education and the pathways and the amazing work that the schools are doing and the energy savings of the building and getting rid of these outdated buildings that kids don't want to be in anymore and getting it to the point where your kids are comfortable inside the school instead of, well, there's a window cracked open because the unit ventilator's fresh air intake doesn't work and code says I have to have fresh air.
I hate to simplify it, but we talk about when we're doing the cost analysis, right? We're going to spend however many millions of dollars to keep everything the same,
Yeah.
right? And to your point, there's all of these advancements in technology, in air quality, in heating, in everything, right? Why not make the building fit what
So-
you need instructionally?
You wanna teach-
In
you wanna
addition,
teach
it's
green
almost like
technologies.
they're all combined.
You see the irony in that?
You want to teach green technologies with
There's some irony in that.
for buildings
Matt.
from the Stone Age.
So Matt, to your point, I'll try
Yeah.
one more time. We have seen from the results of our academic studies, our testing of students, that we have students who run the gamut. We have students who really struggle, and we have students who extremely excel. We are teaching those students in 1950, 1960 classroom where everybody sits in a row and everybody looks at the teacher and the teacher teaches from the front desk. We have spent millions of dollars on professional development to get the teachers to not teach that way.
Change
You know,
that.
we don't learn all in a row,
Yep.
all sitting, all quiet. Our classroom buildings,
Alphabetical order.
we tell teachers, you got to scaffold, you got to differentiate, you got to break your people up into groups. You got to work with this group because they don't know phonics. You got to work with this group because they don't know how to read. You got to work with this group because they don't know how to, but they're all in the same English class. They're all in the same English class.
Even at the
Right.
high school level.
High school level, absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm trying to break up my group. Well, I'm in a classroom that doesn't have a door. So not only am I trying to break up my group and work with one teacher, 3 different sets of people doing 3 different things, but around the corner from me is another teacher doing the same thing because no doors.
I know the building.
There are no
We have
doors.
really lovely common areas.
We
at
have
the
a
front
common
of the
area.
two classrooms,
There's a
Yeah.
doorway out
which
the
are
hallway.
largely a waste of space. But
Right. So they served a
Where you went when you got
purpose.
in trouble.
Yeah.
Just so you
They
know.
served a purpose when the teacher taught from the front of the room.
Yeah.
But the teacher now might have a camera going over here because maybe there's somebody at home who's watching, who's whatever, got COVID, whatever, watching what you're doing. And I'm teaching to you over here, and I'm pressing my computer over here, and I'm running to the whiteboard because I can touch it, and I can be John Madden, and I can draw the, X,
no,
Y,
you
Z.
can't do that because there's a lab table in the way.
Well, right, there is now, but
It's concreted to the floor.
But if I have flexible learning space, which again, a term, but I have some ability to differentiate that doesn't bother Mary's classroom or Steve's classroom. But right now I have a fixed room, no door, and I hear what's going on in the room next door
1972.
in the high school.
So I think this all comes back to Matt's comment about we have to spend this money regardless. Why not spend it where we can get more out of it? And that is actually the question I'm being asked from people who don't have kids in schools anymore. The older people who are worried about the hit to their taxes, because obviously this is definitely hitting people like in the pocket, and they want to know why we should spend this money. So I think that is a really, for me, like that's an important story that I have to be able to support.
So I think if you turn that corner, then you're starting to look at investing to maintain what you have versus investing to build what you need. And I think those words are something pretty darn close to them, should be the underlying of that thing. Invest to maintain what you have or invest to build what you need. That's the crux of what came out of the assessment and the master plan.
That's a good
And,
line.
and if you go further on where education's going to go, we're not done with remote learning. It's going to get more. And
Hence
it's going to
the
get to the
on the
point that
camera.
a kid in Uxbridge is going to be able to come to school here without coming here physically.
We're already doing that.
Yeah,
So,
and the
so,
schools
so
need
that,
to be able to do
yeah.
that.
we're doing that already with the Blackstone Valley Excel. The teacher is like our teacher's in the high school building.
Right.
He has students as far up as Grafton.
Yep.
And as far over as Milford, and they're all with him every Wednesday night. Now, sometimes they do come into the space.
Yeah.
But most often it's virtual, and he's got the screen up, and they're all on. So that's already happening.
Right. And what you're going to see
Yep.
in the not too distant future
pretty cool.
is that
It
during
is.
the day. And the technology for that can't be a screen that's behind the teacher. It has to be that the screen that projects the kid at home has to be in the teacher's line of view. And that screen has to show the teacher. So it has to be able to follow the teacher. So you can't do that in the building you own now. You can only do that in the building that you're going to build, because you can't retrofit that building to that degree.
You can't do a lot of things in the building that
Yeah.
you own. We all know that. And it's funny because, like you talked about, you were getting, why do we have to spend this money? And one of the first things, and I sent it to Jason and Matt, was I sent out, when we started talking about trying to pitch this out to people, I had sent you guys that spreadsheet of, okay, well, here's my pointers that I look at if I were selling this. And one of them was basically to try to fix what you have, I think is way over $100 million by the time you start rehabbing the high school, rehabbing the elementary schools, to make all of this ADA compliant, to make everything up to, and then start to even touch energy codes that you have to start to
This
touch.
seems-
You're $150 million.
Yeah.
And that's,
But and those numbers were to maintain.
Right. So
Not-
not
Yeah.
That
to
doesn't
get where we
transform,
wanna
not to
be.
transform.
no, yeah, it's $100 million to maintain. That's what I'm saying. Just, but to try to hit some of the other numbers, and I don't remember where they all stood on that paper, but you start talking about, you have to remodel, if you're going to just maintain the status quo and one parent files a complaint, then they have to remodel your high school. That's going to cost you $100 million. Well, you got to remodel your elementary school. Well, the state's not going to pay anything on that because you're way over the size that you need.
But to your point, Matt, and to Jason's point, both of them, right? We have to do something. to
Doing
the
nothing is
building.
not an option.
Doing
Right.
nothing is
Doing
not an
nothing is not an option. And to Jason's point, you know what? We don't know necessarily what the instructional program has to look like 5 years from now, because we don't know what the instructional program is going to look like 5 years from now. We have plans for it, and we want to plan outward, and we have ideas, but the world changes so quickly that we don't know what kinds of tools are going to be coming into education
No.
within 10 years. So to Jane's point, we need to take the space, we need to build the space that's flexible,
Right.
that can adapt with education, so that in 20 years from now, we're not sitting, someone else, we won't be sitting here, I'm sure.
So-
You're going to hang around for
someone
20 more
else,
years?
So I'll
someone
give
else
you an
will.
example sitting right here in this room. If you came into this room and you needed to plug into your computer, where would you go?
Well, let's see. I see a plug way on the wall up
Way,
high.
yeah, way up there, or
Yeah.
way on the wall. Everything's on the wall. Like nothing's on the ground. Nothing's not. It's
As evident by the cords straddled all over the floors where, when I was in a conference room today sitting down talking with someone about a new control system, and there was a little console in the middle of their conference table that I could plug my laptop into to do a presentation, hook up to the internet, and have power from and there were like 5 USB ports too. In
I was
case you
going
gotta
to say,
charge
where's
phone.
your charging stations? I can go
but
to the airport.
so
and
do
get
I.
them.
Do I know what we need? No, but I know we need technology, meaning electricity and Wi-Fi systems and safety alarm systems and camera systems that are far better than what we have.
We had a technology meeting today. We meet with our tech team and regularly, and one of the tech. It was really, you'll probably laugh because I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I thought it was really cool. It was showing us a computer, when our old desk PCs kind of burn out, and it really was maybe just a little bit wider than this, and that's
Like an apple pie machine?
Yeah,
You just
it
put
was
it
like
on and
a
you
small
plug it in,
desktop. Yeah.
I'm like, and I looked at, I'm like,
it was a dream machine. Yeah, it was like.
So it's just like the apple pie.
but I'm like, what is that? He's like, that's a computer. I'm like, what? It looked like one of the little Roombats, that go around
Dreambox,
the.
that's what it was.
When I build a
Just the
building
technology
automation
is
system,
amazing.
the computer that runs that
I'd be ready to
is
deal with that stuff.
right.
the size of my smartphone.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's a little thicker than my smartphone,
It's amazing.
and that runs building automations for humongous buildings.
And
And
what
I
we
think
have
the-
is rooms
processing
that
power
have
to
to
such
be air
tiny
conditioned.
spaces.
because
And I think the
the
point is we
towers
need
are
to
overheating
need to have
the
our space equipped to deal with the ever changing that.
Correct. Correct.
Is that yeah?
Well,
That help?
There's also it's the role that the buildings play in society as a whole. And as you move more and more towards alternative fuels, electronic vehicle or electric vehicles, those type of things, the buildings that we're designing now are anticipating that. So charging stations, instead of being a novelty, are a common. The idea of alternate fuel or using the more of a photovoltaic array to produce electricity to run the building is
Most of the buildings are going to heat pump technology now and staying away from fossil fuels because so many places are starting to put bans on fossil fuel construction.
Well, as they say right now, if you take the Massachusetts Energy Code, you can reduce your energy use by about 60% from that and increase your renewable fuel use by 30%, and you'll be at net zero. It's achievable right now very easily.
LEED certified buildings are doing it all the time.
And
that's the new schools are phenomenal from a mechanical design
yeah,
standpoint.
they're darn close to net zero. The tough part in Massachusetts right now is the renewable fuels. Making the building efficient enough is easy. It's the renewable fuel part no one's really caught up with yet. But I think at that point, it's what can you do with the building to make a statement for what the towns see of themselves and do something that's a legacy for the kids who are going to be in the town paying the bills further into the future. You don't want to leave them with a dinosaur, and you don't want to leave them with a restored dinosaur. So that becomes the talking point that I haven't quite fleshed out. I was just kind of formulating that when everybody else was talking, but we probably hit 3 of the 5 that I put out at the beginning of this, and I think there's some good research to do on certainly on the past history, that one has to be nailed down and controlled. And then the educational piece, I think we got from what you're doing to how are other schools delivering it, and why doesn't it really fit? Why aren't you justified in investing in an old building to try to get new curriculum?
that was
I think
actually
that's
very
the way I
helpful
would
for me,
look
too.
at that one.
So Greg, so from that perspective, some of the next steps, we've got to get that
Right,
timeline
right. No, it wasn't. Yeah,
together.
know it
And I
was-
think that seems easy enough to kind of put
Yeah,
together.
that was low hanging fruit, I think,
Yeah.
Jason.
Yep.
Some of the
I would agree with that.
kids to somewhat, you know, it's like
Um,
to Millville and.
And so it sounds like what we're saying is we need to put together
No, it was Ken,
our,
because that's when it blew up and the
Well,
towns blew up.
our
and Millville
narrative.
passed
We've
it,
got,
and
just
I
kind of
felt
got to
that
write
out,
the
everybody
narrative to
figured out
answer the question, why? It sounds like, Tara, you're hearing that from a different perspective, the why question, compared to Matt, like the discussion that you were having with your, with your friends and colleagues. So,
And I was having a discussion with people who have school-aged children, and you were having a discussion with people who don't, and that's going to be the fun part about this. Which is why I want to try to find as many of the little questions that come up to me. I want to come in here and play devil's advocate with them so that I can bounce them off and see what kind of answers I get back. And actually, the educational piece is the one that I struggle the most with. So,
But, I mean, there's, to me also, and again, I'm not to dip my toe in other people's water, but to me, this is also not just about the school. This whole process, yes, the statement of interest is about the schools, and that makes sense. However, as we move forward through the capital planning process for the school district, the towns are looking to do the same thing, and it's so to say that we're trying to just sell it to the parents of the kids that are coming to school, it's not really even true, because there's things that can be done for the communities with the buildings that we may or may not leave right now.
but if I was not part of this committee, I wouldn't know that the towns were doing anything.
Right.
I'd be looking at it as okay, you're going to spend $100 million, and then we're going to get a building that's going to sit here and fall apart like the old school did on Main Street until it got torn down and turned into a library.
so you know what
Those of you who've been in town long enough.
What
to
would be
remember that
helpful, Matt, it sounds like, so I had a conversation with Peter Caruso in Millville, and this was before Dory came on in Blackstone. I think was his name Peter also? Was it Peter? Who was the interim?
Dan.
No, the interim. Oh, Greg, I'm sorry. Okay, so, and and Jan, you might remember this, I had discussions with them around adult education.
Yeah.
And looking toward using some of these career kind of exposure, like these pathways, to run for adult classes. Like what are because when you look at our demographics of our towns, our free and reduced lunch rates about 52%. So that to me says that there's need, right? There's educational need right within our community, and so let's put forward opportunities to work with our adults at night and run some different adult programming, and adult education programming. And there is some interest of some of my colleagues in partnering up with them because they're having some of the similar pieces in their communities that they want to address. But there is a great opportunity to address some of the adult learning needs that might exist within our towns. One of the questions I couldn't quite get a good answer from anyone because I just think they weren't sure how, but I was trying to get to the core of how do we assess the adult learning needs? Like, what is it? Is it GED? Is it English? Is it ELL, English language learners? Is it career development? And so we didn't quite get to where I was looking to go with that in terms of a response because we want to run the programming that people need.
I wonder.
So I just wonder if that helps address the adult side of it
I
too.
wonder if there's even a way to get those kinds of answers from people because people will never tell you. Like I have a guy who works for me who needs his GED, but is so ashamed that he's 30 years old and doesn't have it, he refuses to take a course for it.
See, we could run a GED program and
Yes,
and
we
do
could.
that. Yeah,
Jane will be the
So,
teacher.
I
we could, and we'd love to.
I think some of this data might be available through Jeannie because part of the reason that she chose certain career paths were from working with the industries up and down 146 to see what their needs were.
Yeah.
Air conditioning, mechanics,
I would say there isn't an industry out there right now that doesn't need.
but they need trained people.
Correct.
But like,
Yeah,
I would
correct.
love to run that programming out of the high school at night for our parents. I would love to do that for or our graduates, our students that have moved
Yeah.
on, have tried something and said, you know what, that's not what I thought I was wanting to be a nurse. I don't want to be a nurse. I actually want to go into HVAC. Where do how do I do that?
I have a young man who works for me who graduated from Blackstone, who wanted to be a video game programmer, and now is now a service tech for me
Right.
and learned in the field.
So I would love for us to, and that could be a great way to answer, probably not those that are like seniors that are in their, 70s and 80s but,
Someone could also come in and teach simplistic computer skills, or
well,
I mean,
yeah.
70, 80-year-olds who don't know how to.
So
open their emails. That would
it's
be
funny you
beneficial.
mentioning that because we just met with Karen Testa is her last name.
Testa.
We just met with the new director of
Center
the senior center, and we are partnering with them. We actually our students are going to be playing music for them, like our jazz ensemble is going to be playing for them. We're going to have our seniors and juniors working with their seniors with technology and helping them learn how to use like the iPhones that their families got them or iPads. And
That lesson too.
Good plan.
The remote
and-
control would be helpful too for the TV.
right,
How to program the microwave?
You do that when I was sending my wife up here for the remote control.
and talked about when it's when it's okay when they feel comfortable having them into the high school and actually even though we're going to look to do some catering for them, but actually having them have lunch with our kids and getting them into the building when it's
I don't
So-
know if you want to cater to them.
no.
No. One of the funnest and most nostalgic things about the times that I go to the tech school and substitute teach in the trade program is having lunch with the kids and eating crappy school lunch again. No
Yeah.
offense to school lunch, okay, but
I don't think they're crappy anymore.
They're not.
They're-
yeah.
yeah, I'll say they're not. I mean, it's not 5-star
That's what you
dining,
get,
but like going and
It's a
sitting down
cheese
and having
sandwich.
that school lunch with the kids. I don't know that I would cater that because to me that's a really fun experience of when I get paid $70 a day or $85 a day to go teach at the tech school.
Yeah.
That little bit of a sit down and eat a school lunch again, it's nostalgic. It's fun.
I just mention it as we're partnering with the seniors in a way that we're trying to be really intentional in a hopes that like the community piece, like we want the buildings and our students to give back to them too.
Yeah, no, and I
So two things you got going on there. One is the median age in the towns is projected to continue to increase. Over the next 10 years, go up almost 2 whole years of age. Your only 2 projected growth areas for population are 54 and older. So that gives you 2 things. I did a program down in Delaware that was it was geared towards women who had dropped out of high school, for whatever reason. And in Delaware, as long as you don't officially sign yourself out of school and quit, you can still go back and get a high school diploma. It doesn't have to be a GED. So this whole program was set up around a typical high school curriculum, stripped of all of the time drag, and taught at night, with the idea of come on in after school, after work, and we will get you a high school diploma. All you have to do is show up. And the second part of that was opening up school to people in we had the southeast corner of Wilmington, and then the area where the University of Delaware is. So we had 10 miles apart in this one district. So one part was extremely well educated, the other part was extremely poor. And all of the special program was in the extremely poor part of the district. So one was just come back and get your degree. And the other part was come on in and see how much school has changed since you were last in school. And that was that 45 to 65-year-old. And it was kind of coming in just, what do you want to learn? Here's a shop, here's a library, here's a teacher. What do you want to learn? And it was almost free-form learning. That program both programs are still going on. They're both still very successful, even though the superintendent left shortly thereafter. But the interest to the 45 to 65-year-old was not in structure, but in opportunity.
Yeah.
So that chance to go in and talk to someone like Matt who could tell me how to turn something on a lathe. Cool, something I wanted to do. And it may just be some kind of ombudsman who comes in and goes, well, go talk to him, go talk to them.
if you did an adult secondary education course where it was not even necessarily a certification thing, but almost like almost like career pathways where it's kind of an open learning.
Yeah.
Would it have to be teachers, or could you get
No,
could you get a stack of tradespeople in here to
Yes.
show off
They can add jump.
yes.
where
That-
they,
so
where they
like-
have no teaching credentials, but I'm clearly
Yep.
a professional in my field.
What made me think of it, Matt, was the cyber,
Certificate, not to give them
the cybersecurity program.
Not even a certificate thing, just a
Yeah,
like an
no.
open learning
Just
source.
give
You
a
want to come in and
training.
learn how to wire an outlet? I'll teach you how to wire an outlet. We can bring in master electricians.
But Massachusetts has guidelines for the
Yes.
high school diploma, like you can't, so, Rhode Island still has a diploma program, if you
Right.
will, that people can do, that's not a GED, it's,
Right.
and you have to do certain tasks, and if you do these
That's not
tasks, you
contrary
can
to
get,
what you're
but
He's just
it's
talking about his-
Massachusetts.
I would love to see Massachusetts change it because it's, I mean, the Delaware, when we came across it, the superintendent was already one step ahead of us, and it was just like, yeah, if I could take all the stigma off of a GED,
Yep.
you're
Well,
achieving the same
and
thing.
Massachusetts
Save
doesn't
energy in your
doesn't do a GED, they do the different
They get
test,
real
which is called the high set.
Yeah, I
Right.
said it's the same,
Same day,
different name.
Yeah.
I love the wire.
But I think
master
the thing that
electrician
would interest in terms of what is becoming your median age group or your largest group of individuals is just the ability to come in and explore and learn something. Like Matt was saying, just someone who can say, this is how you do it. And I don't know how you get to the critical mass of enough people doing that to make it work.
That's the question that I was trying to answer when we were exploring this. I think it was last spring. Was just that, because what is the need, and then B, what's the number? Like, what do we?
Yeah,
What do you actually need to? I don't want to run a cybersecurity course in the evening for 2 people that actually aren't really sure if they even want to. Right, when they're interested in.
Could
Because-
you do and I don't know what it would cost the school district, because until you generated interest, it'd be hard to recapture revenue. But if you had free flex space, could you do like a once a month? Maybe it was more, maybe it's not, whatever. Just see what kind of interest you generate. That is take your maker spaces and get a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter, all your trades guys, and let people come in and ask like homeowner questions, because everyone who owns a home has a question they'd love to ask a professional. Like, could that be something that the school?
Yeah, I mean,
the
I
sky's
don't know what-
the
like, I don't
sky's
know
the
what-
limit.
you can do
The
anything.
sky's the limit on
But-
ideas for what we can do and how we
Many of those
engage the
things.
community.
But is that a
Absolutely.
way that you can use those kinds of things to try to sell your flex space? Because in the morning it's we're teaching math, and then we've got a robotics course, and then that Saturday afternoon thing you come to where you come through and walk around and poke at all the professionals and talk to all these guys and meet tradespeople and computer experts and the Geek Squad guys who can help you program your VCR and your wireless remote control. That's all the same space, and that's what this building needs to be. And you should actually sell your senior center thing more, because I wouldn't let my grandparents go to your school right now to go have lunch with your kids, because I'd be afraid they'd fall down those stairs.
I was just going to say, one of the things is they have to get up the stairs that are coming away from the facade and crumbling.
Yeah, no, and that's actually.
You wheel them in the back.
So, yeah, that's exactly what I
They
was
know the ins
thinking.
and
But we
outs
could-
because they
yeah.
went there.
What?
So the seniors know the ins and outs of the high school.
I
'cause
know,
some of
that's
them
right.
But you
went there.
just I think the vision
You
is.
just got to safely get them up those
I think
stairs.
the vision,
which are
and when
coming
we
away
think
from
about
the
our
building.
narrative and our story and explaining that, to me, it's bigger than K to 12. I actually see this as a community
And
piece.
I feel like that piece, while it's been mentioned here a couple of times,
Yeah.
has not been sung enough.
It has not. I would agree
We
with
talked about it in the beginning, so I remember talking about when we were doing the educational,
Yep.
talking about the educational piece, and,
Yep.
and you were talking about bringing in more pathways, and we kind of went down that tech school road that always seems to irk you a little. But I remember those conversations and it being this, okay, well, you can bring in this almost set up an entire early childhood section, and you can have these adult education courses, and then it all kind of disappeared. And I didn't know if that was a function of, well, because we're going to be giving these buildings back, they can't, or if it was just we all got so busy with everything else we had to do. But I almost feel like that narrative needs to come back a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Matt, because I think where our focus, I can only speak for me. I will not speak for the group, but where my focus went was trying to get people off the ledge and trying to get, that kind of de-escalation, so we can actually talk about what we need. And so I think for me, I think my focus went to that, and it went
These
to
things are like secondary.
and it went to the
That's
numbers,
all.
and it went to, but
But we met with, and I was part of both meetings with the capital outlay groups. There was very little
We did not talk about that.
resistance.
Oh, sure.
There was very little resistance
Yes.
from.
Those meetings were great.
No, there's no guarantee that either one of those groups are giving us any support, and I get that. But there was very little resistance, except the one person who always likes to ask the same eight questions and tell us how we're not doing enough thought process work. In Blackstone. There was very little resistance there, and if you can build on that momentum, then you can build your story, because stories are what sell.
Mhm.
And I mean, call a spade, but you have to sell this to the towns. You have to sell this to the person who doesn't have kids in school anymore, wants to know why should I have an increase in my taxes, and you have to sell it to the person who has a kid in school that says, well, this can's been kicked down the road for 25 years. Why am I the one stuck with it now?
So Matt, the way that is brought into a real easy understanding is people react to numbers, but they act on stories.
Yeah.
And so you've got the numbers out there, and now you need to build the stories about why it makes sense. And so I think what we've done now is we've gotten too far into how can you make this work? How could we're down into nitty gritty again. We've also been at it for an hour and a half. You might do well.
We have to set up new meetings first.
You might do well to kind of take the two paths that are really clear are this. One is the past story. What was done? What was that study? What did it show you? What has been filed for SOIs? For core projects, what was done with accelerated repair? And then the second part is probably a little bit easier to get off the ground with, which is the educational direction. You've got a mission statement, you've got a vision statement, you've got the portrait of a graduate. The harder part of that is to define what do you need 5 years out, 10 years out to teach. And that's kind of where we started this whole discussion of where else does teaching
So
go.
I wonder, because I'm trying to be conscious of time, and we know we need to book another meeting, but I'm wondering if it would make sense for, in the interim, to try to find out some of the pieces of information that we're looking for, like the history of
Yeah, I
the
don't think you
capital
can do
stuff.
another meeting until you have that.
Correct.
You need to just put that
Correct.
into
And then I
shape.
think at the next meeting, it might be helpful to go through the presentation that we have put together and talk about what story it is telling, and see if there are sections of the story that align with what it is that we want to be sharing with the communities as that story.
And
Because
maybe
we have this 80, we have this.
Well, by the time you
however
put
many
everything
slides.
into it, you're gonna have more than 100 slides, and you need to shape it, and it can
Yeah.
evolve. That's
Yeah.
fine.
But each section tells a different part of the story.
Yeah, but
So
I think
we
you
need to
got
make it-
positive results because your
We
message
scaled
got
it
smaller.
down.
Yeah.
If your message gets bigger, you're gonna start to lose people.
Well, actually,
I'm not suggesting
I
that
think
we
the
build-
message stayed big. The vehicle got smaller.
Okay.
Yeah, that Enlightener article, I mean, I only got through about half of it before it was too much on paper.
That article should have been 3 issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
Should have been
Because that was a
three-
lot
Well,
to go
to
through.
your
3
point,
issues.
that's what I'm
And
saying. I
following
wasn't
which
saying we
chart
need.
went with which part.
And there was an ad in the middle of it for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jane, I wasn't.
But I am.
I know. I
am
bought a cow or something midway through reading that.
but I am incredibly grateful that she did that
Yes.
Yeah.
and that it got sent to them. I don't know
I mean, it's
who
there.
was
People
the
can take their time to read it.
who was the person who paid the extra to get it to Millville, but I am incredibly grateful because even my husband was like, "When do we get the Blackstone? How's they've been doing this paper for?" I'm like, "Forever, honey, forever." I've never seen this. Like he was all excited. Who's that?
Oh, how awesome. So, just so that everybody, well, I don't want to give out prices. It wasn't outrageous to have it go to both towns. But I don't know how you would you need advertisers from Millville to keep it going to both towns.
No, but if it's a matter of if
There's
we're going to be
only
putting information in the
$600,
Enlightener and it's
I
not
don't know if I can put that on
astronomical
my
to
wall.
get it to both towns.
Oh yeah, Jason
Yeah.
does.
Mary, do you
Okay.
know ballpark what it costs to send it to both
Can I
towns?
say it out loud?
Yeah.
600,
Yeah, it was
600
600.
for Millville.
It was 600 from Millville.
600 bucks.
It's already in Blackstone, so it was
Every
an
time,
additional.
every time that paper needs to go to Millville, I will find you a corporate sponsor for that. Like every time we're going to be putting information from this capital group and it needs to go, it's for $600.
That's what
My
it costs.
company will pay for it 1 month, and I will find out.
Well, that's why I was like, could we all pay for it? Like, what if we all paid?
But that's
Because it just seems
That's
so
what
like
you
I
need.
wish
That's such an
Millville
inexpensive
Send it
thing.
out.
would partner because
And that's
it was
monthly, right?
it was
I mean,
so
well, they
nice
do,
to
they
get
need
a
that,
piece,
you know?
and it's not the
I'll go
Daily
beat up
Breeze.
GRA
It's
to
talking
get them to
about
pay for it
you know
one
North
month.
Smithfield or
Well, I
whatever.
think
what
the
Valley
thing is,
Breeze.
if it's monthly,
Well, that's
then
where
there should
I
be
told
something in
Jason-
every
That's
month.
where I told Jason to go to.
And that's, if it's a monthly
We
paper,
laugh,
it's a
very
matter
laugh.
of that's
I
going to
don't
help us
do that, but
build
they're very nice.
I don't know.
and get
I
people
went in to check
going.
it out.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for the rest of the school year, if we can get something in that monthly that's going to get Millville people reading that and actually seeing what's going on in this process. I mean, for
I think-
what, 4 months left? So you're talking $2,400?
There's more businesses in Millville than people realize too. I know a lot of them are home ox, but when she called the town clerk, there were a lot more businesses than people realize. You know?
Yeah, that's great.
Copeland Roofing is there, Marty's
Yeah.
Liquors.
We gave her
Gar-
that one. We
garden
gave her that one.
wonders.
Yeah, we probably had 6 or 7.
Yeah.
There's something down behind the post office too, isn't
Behind the post office?
there? It's behind the
Well,
post
I don't
office
know.
on the other street, the
Oh,
parallel
oh.
street. There's like a garage.
Well, there's a new something going up. But I don't know what it is. Fancy
It's
windows.
going to be an HVAC company. It's a
HVAC,
buddy of mine
right, yeah.
who's
I
building
did
that
just-
building. The one right up.
HVAC
Yeah, the one that's the big stone building. I mean, the
Yeah,
big
with the
metal
win-
tin
the
building
glass,
just before
yeah.
you head out to.
Like Soda Copeland.
Yeah, that's going to be Ace and HVAC David Conley. And
Well,
his
now
wife
now
Debbie.
we know, Tara.
Yes, I just found that out too. Sorry.
Oh, you did?
I never told you.
Oh, I knew that. I knew that was going up from when they bought
I
the
knew-
land a year ago.
My uncle does Copeland, so I was like, he told me I can ask him, and I never got the answer.
He already
But-
advertises though.
Yeah, Copeland's
Yeah.
already in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does.
And some of the
Mercury.
Millville people do advertise because
They're right
it's
there.
easy to advertise
Yeah,
the
I mean,
black
it's-
stuff.
It's the developers that we should hit because they complain they can't sell the houses because of our school system. So they
What?
should.
Yeah.
Really, I want to find. Oh, we should get a bunch of those guys in here. Just fun
All
with
right,
them.
so we're on track to get these talking points, the narrative.
Yep.
But we need some extra time to pull together the history, so we don't want to meet until we have that.
Well, now we have to. Does this group have to present to the school committee at some point?
That was my next question. We need to approve this SOI, right? So
Well,
when
the
do
school,
we,
March
school
10th.
committee has to.
March 10th
Yep.
is already on that?
It's gonna be on the March 10th agenda.
So then we should meet before that because I assume that something in that March 10th agenda is going to involve them two talking.
Yes.
Yes.
That would be my thought, yes.
So actually, we don't have.
There's a reason
ton of
why I
time
didn't
to
put
go
my
to the
hand
meeting.
up at who would run this.
We don't have a ton of time to gather before. I mean, we still have to meet in a month, basically.
Yeah, we almost have to meet the week before the 10th.
You want to do the 2nd or the 9th if we're keeping with Wednesdays?
Second, we have a
Second, is that
joint
joint?
meeting.
No, the second we have. Yeah, that's
Joint
our.
meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, I have it as the
second.
first. Oops, let me move that.
No, that's the second. Is our joint meeting.
I have,
And
we have
the
the third
9th
open.
Oh, I have us on the 9th. How come I already have a meeting on the 9th?
We could
Yeah,
book
we have a
quite
meeting
few
on the
out.
9th.
This is already scheduled for the 9th?
Yeah, I already have
I
the
don't have-
9th.
I don't
No,
have
no,
a
no.
meeting on March 9th.
I don't have it.
Well, I do.
Negotiations, Jane.
Yeah, negotiations is the 9th.
You should have-
No, it says capital planning subcommittee in person.
Did you just maybe make
Are
a
you
monthly
looking at
repeat?
February 9th?
'Cause that's today.
Yeah, today, February 9th is that meeting.
March 9th is negotiations.
We have negotiations March 9th,
Okay.
Remember that whole class about teaching people smartphones?
yeah.
Sorry. I couldn't resist.
Well, the dates are the numbers are the same with February and March.
Yeah, they are.
So what about March 3rd?
The Thursday?
I can do that.
All right, Thursday, 6 o'clock, March
Are we
3rd.
keeping it at 6 or are we going back to 5:30?
It's up to you guys.
That doesn't matter to me.
It does. I'm just an extra. I'm
The
not on the
5:30.
committee, so
The
5:30?
5:30 went well.
5:30 is better.
I just it's hard for me to get from Providence, but I will do my best as always.
Do we want to put
From
April
Warwick
up
today.
while we're here?
You made it from Warwick?
I was in Warwick ripping a unit apart before I got here.
So then on the 10th, do we need all of this committee, some of this committee?
I am not available on the 10th. I
Okay.
am at a trade show in Connecticut that day.
Done.
No. I'm actually teaching. So I've got a 4-hour presentation I have to put on.
Good.
I think if the talking points are there and the concept of why we're gonna try to, whether or not, I would assume the proposal and the motion would be to move forward. And so, the whys of moving forward, I don't think you need a whole group.
So I guess if anyone wants to join us, we're meeting the school committee on the 10th. It'll be on that agenda.
Yep.
Is there a need for me to be there? You want me to be there?
I'm sorry.
You want me to be there?
Have you been in front, you've been in front of us. Have you been in front of us with a more succinct
Probably not.
report?
Probably
No,
not
I don't
succinct.
think so.
That was
So,
the-
Me too.
That was a meeting that I sat out there and the guy sat here and said, we'll just do minor renovations and not, that was a school committee meeting.
Yeah,
Oh,
So just
but
do minor
that was, like, multiple-
renovations.
Yeah,
so we
Greg,
don't
it
get into spending
would
this
probably,
kind
if
of
you're
money.
able,
Yeah.
it would probably make
Under
sense.
the
I'll hold the night and we'll figure out what needs to be
Doesn't
said.
work
Okay.
Okay.
I know it doesn't work that way. I lost my mind.
okay,
And then
so,
we're
yeah,
doing
I mean,
another meeting after the 10th?
I would assume so,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what works for April?
I don't know about these.
Yeah,
My
let's-
husband's about to lose it.
I'm done.
Probably the week of the
Yeah.
4th,
Yeah.
so the 6th
Oh,
or
we
7th, well, we have a school committee on the 7th.
I was looking to
Does
this.
the 6th work, April
If-
6th?
Between Finn.
Do we want to go to the last week of March?
I was thinking we might want to back
No,
that
no,
up,
no,
yeah.
no.
If
That
we-
way,
you
if the
might
school
wanna
committee,
do
if
the
the school
30th.
committee
Yes.
votes to
Yeah,
approve, do we?
The statement
I
of
assume
interest.
We
Make
have,
the ballot.
we have work that needs to get done
You
before all
didn't make
that.
Yep.
When salary,
Well, these
Sarah
guys do.
resigned,
Yeah,
it didn't make the ballot.
So
Millville
if,
didn't
so
vote
school,
on
if
it.
the school committee votes to approve the SOI, what do we have left to
Yeah,
do?
what's next?
If, once the SOI goes in, you guys have to keep pushing this and keep it out in the public eye.
Right, it's the
Because
communication.
if you get accepted in, that
Need to put
270
together
days
the
is gonna go
building.
so quickly that your head's gonna spin.
So we need to get that narrative out, the timeline, we've got to start getting information in the Enlightener, we need a whole, it sounds like, Greg, what you're saying is we need a PR.
Yes.
Well, and that's what I was saying before when I mentioned the large slide deck. I was not implying we should ever go anywhere with 100 slides. I was saying I think when we identify whether or not that has the parts of the stories that we want to tell, I think we chunk it out
Yeah, you break it up.
and then we start making that huge presentation into the chapters of our story. And then we can record it, we can record informationals with Jesse, put them out to Facebook. We could do Facebook Lives on different sections of our story.
So
So,
that should be part of the 3rd meeting then, really like narrow
Yeah,
down those
start
things.
to narrow it down. And I usually characterize it as I've got 100 slide deck. Don't make me show it to you.
Death by PowerPoint? Come
Yeah,
on, that's so much
exactly.
fun.
And on this slide,
I
How's
tell
March
people when I
30th?
teach class all the
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
2 ways this
That
goes.
works.
That
Death
sounds
by
good.
PowerPoint, or we can have fun.
Wednesday the 30th works. Is that too late, Greg, or is that good, you think?
I think
for-
that's fine. If we meet beginning of the month and the end of the month, then we can get some strategy. Because you'll start to lose people as you get into May.
Yeah.
People start to think about summer.
and we're going to have to be on the SOI before then anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
The 3rd and the
who's
30th.
writing that, you?
No.
You? Matt and I.
How far is it done?
We have
There's-
a lot of information.
lot of
We've
info.
got to, we actually just have to get it into the right format and structure and storytelling and, we have a lot of the information we need.
The 30th, we're maintaining the 5:30 timeline. I'm sorry, my
Yeah,
my
let's do
phone keeps
5:30.
bringing up different times because we've had different start times.
We have a lot of the pieces
to
too, the
5:30.
big chunks, like the capital assessment, and then we have now capital plans. So we're getting there.
All right, anything else? Oh, public forum?
Well,
Bob just wanted to hang out.
Anything we missed? Anything we missed from your
Oh, I have an
perspective?
idea after the meeting about something
Sure.
to throw out.
If there's no other,
Let's-
Yep.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
A second?
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.